Leases are a funny thing because, you know, I think there's always a danger for the lease provider that they can sit and hide behind their terms and not enter into discussion and say, unfortunately, we're very sorry, sir, the terms are the terms are the terms. You've got you're 6 months into a 3-year lease, so we would like our remaining 2.5 years. You know, we don't have a break clause in it. You know, I mean, they're an important thing. Again, with leases, I remember, you know, I've always wanted break clauses in leases, but I've learned that lesson the hard way. You know, and it is a real difficult thing to get out. But as you rightly point out, the protection a limited company provides you is huge. You know, and it's such a benefit to people to have, because it does create that barrier between your personal wealth and your personal liability and your work life. And right. You know, it's a difficult one.
And the related issue to that is, my advice to anybody needing to fund a business is never give a personal guarantee. You know, people find the whole process of raising money a confusing and difficult one, but the fact of the matter is, you do not have to give a personal guarantee to fund a business. There are lots of ways of doing it other than borrowing money, and it is possible to borrow money without giving personal guarantees. And the real success in building a strong, viable business is managing risk and making sure that you don't go that one step too far and overcommit yourself, and not have a fallback position if something goes wrong, because none of us would have foreseen in 2007 that we were heading for a 10-year downturn. We should have done, frankly, but none of us saw it. Gordon Brown and Tony Blair were still spending money like it was never going to end. I mean, I don't know if anybody remembers "We've abolished boom and bust," but you know, those words have come back to haunt him. And I'm not knocking them because of their party. It's just none of us would have foreseen that in 2007.
In terms of local business and stuff like that, I mean, what for you as a experienced business person, what sort of trends do you see reoccurring locally, and and how do you see the local? What's it like? You know, you've worked like me, you've worked in London and stuff like that, and you've come back and done the local stuff. What do you see as the difference between the two?
Frankly, it's a huge question. But if you look at the type of people who operate in London, they have to operate at a faster, higher level, because the cost and the risks are that much greater. The cost of property is greater, the cost of people is greater, and you've got to be much better organised to make it work. Much of the economy in Suffolk, which actually compared to the rest of the country is doing rather well, is built on people running lifestyle businesses. And frankly, they're only able to do that because of the cushion they've built up over a number of years and the stage of life that they've got to. And younger people think that they can emulate that particular model. Believe me, you can't. To succeed in business, you have to put in a minimum of 3 or 4 years absolute focus, bloody hard work. And there isn't any alternative to that. And the people who say, oh, but I'm going to set up in business and leave my job to run a lifestyle business, actually have got savings behind them. They've already bought their house, they've no longer got the big mortgage, and all they're looking at doing is funding their relatively limited requirement for cash flow. That's fine if that's what you want to do, but to be honest with you, that is not a serious business in the sense that you set up a company to maximise the value of that business and maximise the profits for the investment that's put in.
The conversation I had with somebody was saying that, I forget who it was that I pinched this phrase off, but something that we had an online discussion about a while ago. If you treat it like a business, it will make business money.
Yep.
You treat it like a hobby, it will make hobby money. And you've got to do the 40, 50, 60 hour week religiously to get the 40, 50, 60 hour return. If you put 6 hours in, unless you're very fortunate, you may only get 6 hours worth of return out of it, sort of thing. So yeah, I completely sympathise with that. In terms of other things, I mean, we talked earlier about it can take quite a while. The sales process is longer around here for businesses to spend money. I mean, is that something you agree with? You know, you tend to see the same thing?
Depends what it's for. Currently, IT is very easy to sell. People are, they've gone through a few years of taking the accountant's advice and cutting back, and now they're now saying, where else can I cut and where does my profit come from? And they're beginning to look at growth, but people are finding marketing very difficult, and people are no longer getting the 4 times return on every pound they spend on marketing. But IT is enabling people to become more efficient. So IT is selling, and there's not too much difficulty with that, and people in Suffolk are investing in it. The big issue that I find is that people in small businesses are taking their advice from other small business owners. There's a reason they're small.
Yeah.
And there is almost a race to the bottom for the price people will pay for services, assuming that every supplier in the market is of equal quality. I don't know about you, but if I need brain surgery, I want to go and see the best brain surgeon. And actually, if I want to spend money on marketing for my business, I want the best bang for my buck that I can get. And there is a world of difference between somebody who's been in business for 2 or 3 years and saying they're a specialist expert, and somebody who's been in business for 20 years and is a real expert.
It's the old endurance phrase, though, isn't it? It's about, if you've been in the industry for a period of time, it's because you've seen the good, you've seen the bad, and you've experienced the middle in between, sort of thing.
Now, I've got clients who I have put in touch with designers who will do a logo for between £50 and £150. I need a logo and brand design job for one of my businesses, and I will spend £5,000 on it. Why? Because that will pay for itself time after time after time. It's not that I want to spend more money or I can afford it better than the next man. It's that that investment will pay me back 4, 5, 6 times over when it's made properly, whereas going to the low-cost amateur who can do something that'll do actually won't take me to the level that I need to with the investment I'm making in all other areas of the business.
It's a friend of mine who runs an IT business was saying to me, it's about how big an itch it is you've got to scratch. And he said, I know people that when you tell them you need a new server and it costs, a couple of £1,000 set up, I mean, this was going back a few years ago because they had a couple of £1,000 now, but, at the time, people say, oh, I haven't really got the money for a server, and his view was, well, your whole business dies without this server. Your whole business dies without this server, yet you'll happily spend £750 a month on the brand new Range Rover outside the front that you're driving around in that isn't keeping your business going. It's about sort of, how big is the itch and how bad do you have to scratch it, and if it's a £5,000 design job, then it's worth £5,000. It's the return on the investment.
And the other thing that people won't do is they won't take out the support contract for their IT, and their entire business is in this black box in the corner that's not backed up, and they've not got a support contract, and then one fine day it falls down.
Another common thing with small businesses is they'll say, oh, I've got a mate that does that.
Yep. And
of course he turns up and then the Exchange server falls over, or, and then it costs more money to get someone accredited and qualified and good to come back in and undermine the complete, hash that's been made on the original one. So kind of, problems can expand. I mean, what sort of problems, you're quite well known in the local community, you know, with a lot of other business people and stuff like that. I mean, what sort of, are there any, given that the market is improving, it's still a long way back from, the boom times that we had sort of post 2008, but are there any things that you're seeing that are coming out now? We heard this green shoots phrase, God knows how many years ago, but there's still green shoots out for a large proportion of people. Are there any things that you're seeing new, or any things you envisage that are going to start creeping into the local economy?
Technology and the web clearly are continuing to move us forward, but some of the old ideas shouldn't be discarded. First thing is, I've noticed that people who are successful in business have usually got a smile on their face. They didn't get a smile on their face by being successful. They were successful because they always had a smile on their face and people wanted to do business with them. which I think is something that everybody can learn from. And if you look around at the kind of stuff that people are doing out there, it's all about relationships. It's all about just being natural with people, because generally speaking, people buy people. They don't buy products or services, and very often people who are selling forget what it is that they are trying to deliver to their customer. If a man goes into a hardware store and says, I want a 1/4 inch drill bit, he doesn't want a 1/4 inch drill bit, he just wants a 1/4 inch hole in the wall. But we sometimes forget what it is that people want from us. And if you can remember to understand what it is your customer wants, and you, instead of telling them about what you've got, ask them about what they need,
provide a solution.
Those old skills really come into play. And the real thing that a lot of relatively inexperienced business people have a difficulty with is selling. If you have 100 business owners in a room, and you ask them if they're an entrepreneur, 90 of them put their hand up. If you ask them if they're good at marketing, about 50 of them will put their hand up. If you ask them if they're good at selling, you probably get 2 or 3. And people don't see themselves as being head of sales. But the fact of the matter is, if you're a business leader of a 1-man business or a 20-man business, you are head of sales.
But intentionally, little kids do that in the playground. 4-year-olds, they want to be the popular kid. So they are, whether we like it or not, we're all selling. It's something you learn. But I think it's quite hard for people going in. The government's looking for people to come into the market and start up these micro businesses. But I think it's very hard for people to pick the skill set up to learn that without having been an employee or involved in a family business or growing up around it. We learn from others around us, and I think it's quite hard to pick that sort of skill set up. So it's.
I think the way you deal with that is anybody going into business needs to recognise that they are going to be a leader. They first need to know how to lead themselves, and secondly, they need to understand how you put a team together and lead it, even if that team is made up of people who only spend 1 or 2 hours a month with you. But you still need a team, and you need people to work with you and be committed to you and work with you on a regular basis. Because if you pay somebody to come and do work for you, they actually become a salesperson for your business. They become an advocate for your business. So whilst you think it's money going out of the door that you could have done possibly for yourself, maybe not quite as well, actually what you're doing is you're buying a network. You're buying a team of supporters. And if you talk to that same 100 business people about what's wrong with the team of their favourite football club or their cricket team or their rugby team, they can tell you what's wrong with the players, why they're out of position, that they're not working hard enough. And you ask them the same question about their business, they haven't got a clue. And managing a business and managing a sports team are very, very similar. And so people need to understand, if they've set themselves up in business, they are a leader and they need to get expert at leading. They don't need to get expert at social media, they don't need to get expert at SEO, they don't need to get expert at accounting, because there are dozens of people around who've got those skills, who will sell them to you relatively cheaply, who are much better at it than you will be, even if you spend a year focused on it.
Yeah. I outsourced my accounts after 3 months.
Absolutely.
Did a tax return, did it for the wrong 3 months. So, yeah, I completely agree with that. Well, clearly got a lot of very interesting points, and at some point we'll definitely get you back in and talk over some of the other specific ones as well. But thank you very much for coming to the show. It's been really good to have you. I know you fairly well anyway, and I'm sure we'll do a few bits of business over the next year as well.
Always a pleasure.
So thanks very much for coming in, and thanks very much for tuning in. It's Craig Sennett, Suffolk Business Life. Thank you.